Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Entering the Veil. The veil represents the separation between the holy and the most holy. Although the veil was torn in two, a separation still exists to this day due to our falling away from the sound doctrine originally delivered unto us via the Holy Bible. What this means is there is now a spiritual veil over the eyes and ears of the general public, causing a separation where none should exist. We are committed to helping guide as many people as possible along the spiritual path of entering the veil.
Entering the Veil presents Proven in Battle. During these tough economic times, an increasing number of people have found themselves in between a rock and a hard place. Though these situations are extremely unpleasant, they oftentimes force us to reach deep down inside ourselves to find what it takes to move on. We oftentimes have no idea that these things are inside of us. But when we persevere, there is a bitter sweetness and sizable amount of glory given to the Most High God. Most of us ask the same question when we are presented with a life-altering problem. Why me? We all have a level of selfishness in this area. We want to receive all the blessings, but none of the backstabbings, and all of the triumphs, but none of the trials. But we cannot have one without the other. I like to call this way of thinking the salvation drive-through, where we desire to supersize the salvation, but hold all persecution. A wise old man once told me that salvation without sacrifice is not known in Scripture. To make it plain, to be acceptable for the Master's use, we must be proven in battle. To explain this, we will start off in 1 Samuel chapter 17 and read an account about the great King David before he was king and before anyone considered him to be great. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 12. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Please take notice that David was the youngest of the brothers, which means he was the lowest esteemed. Also, take notice that he returned to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. This is a foreshadowing of Christ, who is called the Son of David, and also fed his father's sheep. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 16. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for your brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to your brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how your brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they, and all the men of Israel, were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be, that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living Elohim? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that kills him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for you are come down that you might see the battle. Now here we notice that David is being chastised by his brother for following his father's orders. This is also a prophetic sign, as Christ would also suffer hard words from his brothers for following his father's orders. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 32. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Your servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Your servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living Elohim. David said, Moreover, Yahweh, that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and Yahweh be with you. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. Here is the meat of the whole matter. A king's weapon is normally the finest around, but David would not take it to battle because it had not been proven in battle. This could be perceived as disrespectful, but David was doing what he had to do to ensure his victory. We are in the process of becoming proven in battle for the Son of David, which is Christ, who is our King. We must become fine weapons of warfare, not in the flesh, but in the spirit. As Paul states in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. So our proving in battle will come from those trials and tribulations that we will have to suffer in our day-to-day walk. In fact, sometimes we are presented with situations that cause us to make some difficult decisions. How we handle these situations dictate whether or not we become polished weapons of spiritual warfare fit for the master's use. We must understand that Yahweh will not fight with a tarnished weapon. Let's pick this up in the book of Joshua, chapter 7, and see what could possibly make us a tarnished weapon. Joshua, chapter 7, verse 2. And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is beside Beth-aven, on the east side of Bethel, and spake unto them, saying, Go up and view the country. And the men went up and viewed Ai. And they returned to Joshua, and said unto him, Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but a few. So there went up thither of the people about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai smote of them about 36 men, for they chased them from before the gate, even unto Shebarim, and smote them in the going down. Wherefore the hearts of the people melted and became as water. And Joshua rent his clothes, and fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of Yahweh until the eventide, he and the elders of Israel, and put dust upon their heads. And Joshua said, Alas, O Adonai Elohim, wherefore hast thou at all brought this people over Jordan, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Would to Elohim we had been content, and dwelt on the other side Jordan. O Yahweh, what shall I say, when Israel turned their backs before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear of it, and shall environ us round, and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do unto your great name? Now this may appear to be a lack of faith on Joshua's part, but he was promised that all these lands were going to be delivered into his hand. So at this point in time, Joshua is seriously confused as to why Israel has suffered loss against such a non-formidable foe. Joshua chapter 7, verse 10. And Yahweh said unto Joshua, Get thee up. Wherefore liest thou thus upon your face? Israel hath sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them. For they have even taken of the accursed thing, and have also stolen, and disassembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were accursed. Neither will I be with you any more, except you destroy the accursed from among you. Now it becomes clear to Joshua that spiritual uncleanness has separated Israel from their Creator. This problem must be rectified, or they will continually be tarnished. Joshua chapter 7, verse 13. Up, sanctify the people, and say, Sanctify yourselves against tomorrow. For thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel, There is an accursed thing in the midst of you, O Israel. You cannot stand before your enemies until you take away the accursed thing from among you. In the morning, therefore, you shall be brought according to your tribes. And it shall be that the tribe which Yahweh take shall come according to the families thereof. And the family which Yahweh shall take shall come by households. And the household which Yahweh shall take shall come man by man. And it shall be that he that is taken with the accursed thing shall be burnt with fire, he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant of Yahweh, and because he has wrought folly in Israel. So Joshua rose up early in the morning and brought Israel by their tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. And he brought the family of Judah, and he took the family of the Zarhites, and he brought the family of the Zarhites, man by man. And Zabdi was taken, And he brought his household, man by man. And Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was taken. And Joshua said unto Achan, My son, give, I pray you, glory to Yahweh Elohim of Israel, and make confession unto him, and tell me now what thou hast done. Hide it not from me. And Achan answered Joshua and said, Indeed, I have sinned against Yahweh Elohim of Israel, and thus have I done. When I saw among the spoils a goodly Babylonish garment, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels weight, then I coveted them, and took them. And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. Pay attention to verse 21. When I saw among the spoils a Babylonish garment. Now in Joshua's time, this was a physical object. In these days and times, the Babylonish garment could be the ways of Babylon that we have coveted and hid in our hearts. Time and time again, the Israelites received condemnation for keeping the customs of the heathen nations round about them. Joshua chapter 7, verse 22. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran unto the tent, and behold, it was hid in his tent, and the silver under it. And they took them out of the midst of the tent, and brought them unto Joshua, and unto all the children of Israel, and laid them out before Yahweh. And Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his oxen, and his asses, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that he had. And they brought them unto the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, Why have you troubled us? Yahweh shall trouble you this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and burned them with fire, after they had stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. So Yahweh turned from the fierceness of his anger. Wherefore the name of that place was called the Valley of Achor unto this day. These accounts sound very harsh to us in this day and time, but spiritually, what must happen is the uncleanness in us has to die off. When the uncleanness is purged out of us, we will be polished weapons ready for spiritual war. The obvious question is, how do we become proven in battle? The chances of an average everyday computer programmer going to war is slim to none. So there must be another way for this generation to be proven in battle. Let's examine what's written in the Gospels to uncover what we may encounter in this day and age spiritual boot camp. Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out, and to be trodden under foot of men. These passages indicate that we will suffer, maybe not physically, but definitely mentally and spiritually. Verse 13 says that you are the salt of the earth. Nowadays, there is a very small value placed on salt, but during the age of no refrigeration, salt was king. Salt preserved food and made it taste better. Also, the word salary derived from the word salt. Salt was so valuable, it was used as money. So spiritually, you preserve things, make them better, and you're like money. This definitely means all those that endure these things are proven in battle. So we see that we must endure these things. But let's see who we must endure these things from. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. We must keep in mind the Messiah's spiritual definition of who is your mother, father, and brother. Mark chapter 3, verse 31. There came then the Messiah's, brethren, and his mother, and standing without, sent unto him, calling him. And the multitude sat about him, and they said unto him, Behold, your mother and your brethren without seek for you. And he answered them, saying, Who is my mother, or my brethren? And he looked round about on them which sat about him, and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of Elohim, the same is my brother, and my sister, and mother. These words come from the Messiah himself, and he says that a man's foes shall be those of his own house. Let's examine this a little deeper. Since we have just heard what Christ, the son of David, had to say on the matter, let's see what King David has to say on the matter. Psalms chapter 55, verse 1. Give ear to my prayer, O Elohim, and hide not yourself from my supplication. Attend unto me, and hear me. I mourn in my complaint, and make a noise. Because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. And I said, Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then would I fly away and be at rest. Lo, then would I wander far off and remain in the wilderness. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Adonai, and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go about it upon the walls thereof. Mischief also and sorrow are in the midst of it. Wickedness is in the midst thereof. Deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that reproached me, then I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was you, a man mine equal, my God and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked into the house of Elohim in company. Let death seize upon them, and let them go down quick into hell, for wickedness is in their dwellings and among them. As for me, I will call upon Elohim, and Yahweh shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. He hath delivered my soul in peace from the battle that was against me, for there were many with me. Elohim shall hear and afflict them, even he that abides of old. Because they have no changes, therefore they fear not Elohim. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He has broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Cast your burden upon Yahweh, and he shall sustain you. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. But thou, O Elohim, shalt bring them down into the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in you. The sacrifices of Elohim are a broken spirit, and a broken and a contrite heart, O Elohim, you will not despise. There are so many profound points in this psalm, but we must mention how King David expressly makes the point of how it was his friend, not an enemy, that betrayed him. He even went so far as to let us know that this was someone that he went to church with. We as individuals are often very particular on how we deal with our enemies because we expect them to do hateful and spiteful things toward us. The area we often neglect to protect is the area where our friends lie. This is what causes a broken and contrite heart. The fact that the betrayal came about from someone you truly loved. But this moves us closer to the Messiah. For how can we preach his word and feel his pain unless we have something to compare it to? Pay particular attention to verse 21, which says, his words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. These points are very profound when we consider that his, King David's present, was a prophetic look at Christ, the son of David's future. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6. And one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in your hands? Then he shall answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Matthew chapter 26, verse 48. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, the same is he, hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Yahshua and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Yahshua said unto him, Friend, wherefore are you come? Then came they and laid hands on Yahshua and took him. Now, of course, most of us know about Judas and how he walked with the Messiah. The betrayal with King David was with smooth words. The betrayal of Christ was the ultimate. His enemy actually dipped his food in the same bowl and kissed him. We in this day and age like to separate ourselves from these events because they happened so long ago. But in actuality, we must partake in these events as well. Matthew chapter 10, verse 24. The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? Fear them not, therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What I tell you in darkness, that speak you in light. And what you hear in the ear, that preach you upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. But rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So we see that we have to endure grief, just as our Messiah did. These occurrences shape and mold us into what he would have us to be. For even man in his best state is at war with himself. For the flesh lusts against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. This means that there is a spiritual war inside of us all, and that's before we encounter anyone else. The Messiah left us a spiritual training manual to facilitate our spiritual growth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 38. You have heard that it had been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that you resist not evil. But whosoever shall smite you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue you at the law, and take away your coat, let him have your cloak also. This practice has become increasingly difficult because the love of many has grown so cold. It's already hard enough to turn the other cheek. But if a man sues you to take away your coat, we are to give him our cloak also. This has become insanely difficult in these days, as robberies and thefts are on the rise. In examining these principles, we should just part with the item and suffer wrong. In the days of old, there used to be a thing called honor among thieves. Nowadays, we hear of story after story of robberies where the victim gave up their belongings, but the thief still took their life. Matthew chapter 5, verse 41. And whosoever shall compel you to go a mile, go with him too. Give to him that asks you, and from him that would borrow of you, turn not you away. You have heard that it hath been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? And if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be you therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. These words are some of the most pivotal sayings about love known to man. We must understand that Yahweh does not change. These principles were brought forth very early, even in the book of Genesis. We are told to love our enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Keep that in mind as we read an account about the trials of Joseph. Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. We must understand that a coat of many colors was one of power. The envy came into place because the perception of power was placed on the youngest of the children. Typically, the double portion was given to the firstborn. The power traditionally lies with that individual. But Yahweh is not bound by tradition. He has the right to place the spirit of a thing in the place where it is best suited. Genesis chapter 37, verse 4. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said unto him, Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams, and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to you to the earth? And his brothers envied him, but his father observed the saying. Most of the prophets received night visions or dreams. These things come from the Most High. Oftentimes, we find that there is a duality when it comes to prophecy. This means that the prophecies could speak of two events at one time, oftentimes spread across a vast area of time. One of Joseph's dreams was that the sun and moon, which was his father and mother, and the 11 stars, which are his brothers, who are the 12 tribes of Israel, made obeisance to him, which means they bowed to him. The complexity of this prophetic vision comes into place as the brothers perform evil works that are to keep the prophetic vision from happening. But actually, it is because of their actions that the vision comes true. Genesis chapter 37, verse 18. And when they, the brothers, saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beasts have devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let's not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. In verse 23, it says that they stripped him of his coat of many colors. This means they took the natural embodiment of his power and sold him to be a slave. Man has the ability at times to take away things in the flesh, but never in the spirit. To sum up the rest of the story, Joseph was a slave, but gained favor through the spiritual power of his visions. Even though the physical display of Joseph's power was violently taken away from him by his brothers, the actual gifts were still in his possession. These gifts were given to him by the Creator and could not be taken by man. But one of the greatest points of this story is Joseph's way of handling what happened to him. Genesis chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, Cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me hither. For Elohim did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but Elohim. And he have made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Joseph came to the realization that the Most High was in charge of all things. Those evil things had to come upon him to force him out of the comfort of his own land and into servitude in another land. It was through these hardships that he was able to save his family. The story of Joseph is a foreshadowing of Christ. Just as Christ was hid in Egypt, so was Joseph. Just as Christ was betrayed by his brothers, so was Joseph. Just as Christ was offered up in order to save Israel, so was Joseph. And just as Christ forgave them that despitefully used him and persecuted him, so did Joseph. The stories that are written in the Holy Bible do not have an expiration date. We have to place ourselves in the shoes of our forefathers and ask ourselves the difficult question of, what would I have done? If your brothers had betrayed you, contemplated killing you, but instead sold you into slavery, what would you do? We must also add into the equation that all power was placed into Joseph's hand. So he could have done what he wanted to his brethren, because he had all power in Egypt while they had none. This is the true measure of a man. What will you do when it is in your power to do it? Joseph was truly proven in battle, as he did not revenge himself against his brothers. He instead used his power to save them. These are examples of spiritual higher ground that we all should strive for. We are but fleshly men and women, so we will fall. But a just man falls 7 times. We just have to make sure that we get back up. Since everything in this day and age is about our convenience, it is difficult for us to imagine that the Most High Covenant Elohim of Israel is not out for our convenience. He is out for our salvation. This means that sometimes we must be elevated on a higher plane than we would ever seek for on our own. Believe it or not, it's the trials and tribulations we encounter that help us reach these new levels. As a wise old man once told me, don't ask for Yahweh to remove the mountain. Ask Yahweh for the strength to climb the mountain. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice, inasmuch as you are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. If you be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are you, for the Spirit of glory and of Elohim rests upon you. On their part, he is evil spoken of, but on your part, he is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any man shall suffer as a follower of Christ, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify Elohim on this behalf. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of Elohim. And if it first began at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of Elohim? The summation of this matter is that judgment must begin at the house of Elohim. This means that those things that are being done in error, according to as it is written, must be rectified. The mere outward displays of love and obedience must now be done with love, meekness, and all sincerity. Judgment is a scary but a very necessary action if righteousness is to be obtained. No doubt, some of these trials will rock the very core of what we stand upon, but we were given spiritual examples of how to deal with these things. Matthew chapter 4, verse 1. Then was Yahshua led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If you be the Son of Elohim, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and sets him on a pinnacle of the temple, and says unto him, If you be the Son of Elohim, cast yourself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest at any time you dash your foot against a stone. Yahshua said unto him, It is written again, You shall not tempt Yahweh your Elohim. This altercation between Yahshua and Lucifer shows us how to deal with spiritual warfare. We must first observe that Lucifer is crafty in mishandling the word. Lucifer was taking truthful statements contained in the word, but using them out of context, thereby taking the truth of the word of Elohim and using it deceitfully. We must also notice how the Son of Elohim fought back. He fought the word with the word. It's called trying the Spirit by the Spirit. We must be careful how we hear what we hear. When Lucifer said, It is written, Yahshua fought back with, It is written again. In other words, he went to another place in the Holy Writings to prove that Lucifer used a truthful statement untruthfully. We must be aware of these things in our personal walk and make sure we don't twist the word of Elohim in order to promote our own agendas. Let's look at one of the parables of Yahshua so that we can get a deeper understanding of the spiritual warfare we may encounter. Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, did not you sow good seed in your field? From whence then has it tares? He said unto them, An enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, Will you then that we go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather you together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Taking an in-depth look at the parable of the wheat and tares, we see a householder being about his business, doing his works, sowing good seed. But in the darkness of night, an enemy came and changed his works by inserting things that he had not placed there. He planted wheat, but his enemy came and spitefully planted tares. But the tares were not taken away immediately. The tares were allowed to grow up with the wheat, and at the time of harvest, they would be gathered together to be thrown in the fire. This indicates that righteous judgment does not come immediately, but it does come. Just as our Messiah had great things to overcome, so do we. Yahshua spoke and said, whosoever loves mother or father, sister or brother more than me is not worthy of me. We must also take into account that Yahweh our Elohim is a very jealous Elohim. It is imperative that we remember he is a spirit, and we must worship him in truth and in spirit. Choosing anyone or anything above our Creator could be detrimental to our salvation. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 22. Now Eli was very old, and heard all that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he said unto them, why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by all this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear. You make Yahweh's people to transgress. If one man sin against another, the judge shall judge him. But if a man sin against Yahweh, who shall entreat for him? Notwithstanding, they hearken not unto the voice of their father, because Yahweh would slay them. And the child Samuel grew on, and was in favor both with Yahweh and also with men. And there came a man of Elohim unto Eli, and said unto him, thus saith Yahweh, did I plainly appear unto the house of your father when they were in Egypt in Pharaoh's house? And did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer upon mine altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? And did I give unto the house of your father all the offerings made by fire of the children of Israel? Wherefore kick you at my sacrifice and mine offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honoreth your sons above me? In Eli's refusal of discipline to his sons, the Most High said he chose his sons over him. This was definitely a decision of great heaviness to Eli, because he loved his sons very much. But we must ask ourselves the question, who gave Eli the blessing of being able to have the sons in the first place? We must not love the gift more than the gift giver. Sometimes we are proven or disproven by the very ones or things we love. Since the parable of the wheat and the tares says, let them both grow together, there will be people that we will grow with, but later find that they do not share the same dedication for the love of Christ as we do. It is not our responsibility to separate from those people. But if we choose them over the gospel, we would have failed. So let every man run, and let us remember that the race is not given to the swift, but to those that persevere. And in our perseverance, we shall be proven in battle. Thank you.
I'm in a spiritual prison, separated from all my works. Convicted, sentenced, no trial, and man, it hurts. Secluded in prison for a crime I ain't do. Maybe you would've done it, but I ain't you. The countenance of the bitches that was given to me is fair to look upon, so I encounter much envy. Entered as a captive, but wisdom expelled from my mouth, so I excelled above all that dwelled in the house. Y'all made things prosper in my hands, so the master of the house put me out with the man. And officer's wife groped me and said, lie with me. I said no, then she said, well, you gon' die by me. The man was wise, but believed the lies his wife for him. And sometimes his gift makes doom for him. The same thing to make you laugh and make you cry. What I'm saying is all truth and ain't no lie. Sometimes the road to salvation gets real tough. When do you get to enough is enough? Question.
How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake? How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake?
My mouth got me into this bind, telling my brothers my dreams time after time. But I had elaborate dreams, even my father rebuked me because of these things. What kind of wickedness is this you see? Show me your mother and your brothers bow down to thee. But my dreams kept coming and they hated me the more. Wherever my brothers went, they hated for me to go. They conspired against me, till it's end his days. One had compassion and said, let's make him a slave. Move from servant to prisoner to power in the land. So much in fact, my brothers had to eat out my hand. It was wickedness and strife. You had to sacrifice me so I could save your life. Sometimes the road to salvation gets real tough. When do you get to enough is enough? Question.
How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake? How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake? How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake? How much can you suffer? How much can you take for righteousness' sake?
You see, salvation without sacrifice is not known in Scripture. We want to do the salvation drive-through thing, supersize the salvation, but hold the persecution. Nobody ever guaranteed you that because you did right, that you were not going to be punished for it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Take Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, or you might know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.